Hey everyone, today I am joined by Albert Boo. He is the CEO of Neutron Pay, and we're going to be talking about Lightning Network today. Albert, now I love your name because in my life I've only met one other Boo, and that's you with your last name. So when we first met, it was great to see another Boo out there after going through my entire life without seeing too many of them. Um, but maybe I'll give you a second to give a little bit of a background on yourself and how you got to this point of working on Neutron Pay.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Boo. Yeah, same goes for you too, right? Like it's been a while that I found someone that has the same exact last name as me, or using the name as me. So my journey kind of started with, my background's in computer engineering. I've been in fintech pretty much all my whole life, and the kind of journey started for me in 2013. I was at a fintech company, and we were doing, obviously just kind of builds. And I had a teammate that was working with me, came up to me and showed me this white paper, just like everyone else in Bitcoin. And I kind of looked at it, scoffed at it, and then I just said this won't work, and I threw it aside. Came back to it after about 6 months. The light bulb kind of came up in my head and started reading on it, and then went into the rabbit hole for 6 to 8 months reading on it in 2013. And then after that, kind of opened up a couple businesses along the way. So went to had the second and third two-way ATMs in the world into Vancouver. We got beat out by a competitor of ours. Ran that for about 2 years, and then we sold that. Then started a mining operation in 2016 and ran that for about 2 years. And we were mining anything from Ethereum, Litecoin, Monero, Ethereum Classic at the time, and then sold that to a competitor as well. And then when Lightning came out in 2016, followed that really closely. And then, long story short, kind of just started Neutron Pay from there. Just found out that the Lightning Network was something that we needed on the Bitcoin network, which was like a scalable solution. The layer one solution was, people say, it was a bit slow, but it'd be a 10 minute transaction if I wanted to send you something. And so the Bitcoin Lightning Network allows you to now have instant transactions. And so building around that was kind of very similar to what my background was already was in fintech. And so moving that together, fintech and Lightning together, just made sense. And so now what we do is at the Light and Neutron Pay, we're an infrastructure company, but we're based and focused on payments and transfers.
Awesome. All right, so that's a great overview, but we're gonna dig into that a little bit more. We're titling this discussion, What is Lightning Network? And maybe we should start there. You've touched on it a little bit at this point. There's a lot of discussions that we've had on our show around crypto at this point. We've been talking about different sectors of it, and it just feels like there's so many aspects that you can apply crypto into things that you're doing. And you're specifically focused on the fintech and the transaction side of things. And this Lightning Network, when you brought it up with me, sounded really interesting. So let's take a few minutes here to kind of deep dive really into what is Lightning Network and what does it solve for people?
Yeah, sure. So Lightning Network is a layer two solution that sits on top of Bitcoin. And so what it provides is what people would call off-chain transactions. And so when you look at Bitcoin on the first layer, it uses something that's called proof of work. And proof of work happens every 10 minutes, meaning that a block is secured on the network, and that consists of a certain amount of transactions, right? And so that's layer one, and that's been running ever since 2009. And so the Lightning Network sits on top of that to solve the scalability issue that the first layer couldn't do for being a global payments, right? And so Lightning Network allows us to now have instant payments and settlement on the Lightning Network using off-chain transactions. And so what that means is we are still using the first layer of Bitcoin as a security mechanism while having a separate ledger on top of the second layer, allowing us to have instant transactions back and forth. So now we're able to send Bitcoin. If I was I'm in Vietnam right now, and if I wanted to send you some Bitcoin in Canada, you can now receive that instantly instead of having to wait 10 minutes.
So this is really servicing like people who want to make smaller transactions or bigger transactions. Like, what kind of use cases are you seeing here?
Yeah, so there's a lot of use cases. A lot of it is microtransactions that we couldn't do necessarily online today, right? So if we wanted to do something in small microtransactions like a penny or fractions of a penny, we can't do that today with credit cards, right? With Bitcoin, we can because it's more of what they like to call as programmable money. So it allows us to shoot smaller transaction sizes. Like we can do fractions of a penny. We can stream actually some stats over to you. So like in this podcast or this video, we could have a tool or service that allows us to accept donations while people are watching, and so that could be streamed through the Lightning Network. And so that kind of use case for that too, as well as perfect example is like streamers or anyone else that's kind of hosting anything. If a person wanted to do a smaller transaction size, because if we're looking more at like North America, right? Not everyone's going to have like a dollar that they can do, right? So going to the context of like say third world countries, maybe if they want to do 10 cents, 5 cents, they can now do that with the Lightning Network. That allows them to donate or transact with a streamer or someone that they like online.
And is it always going to be like online type use cases? Like, um, you know, the folks who might want to do like over in North America, we have things like Venmo or like peer to peer transactions like that. Like just the ability to say, hey, you're out for dinner with some friends, and your friend picks up the bill, and so you need to get some money over to your friend. You service that kind of stuff.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of funny. What the Lightning Network is really good at that people kind of miss is it's an actual payment rail technology, right? Aside from Bitcoin, of everyone looking at the price and saying, "Oh, when it goes up and down," that's what they really look at it as, and it's a trading thing. But the actual technology itself is a payment rail, right? So the beautiful thing about Lightning Network is that it's interoperable. So meaning that anyone can join the network, and anyone that's on the network can pay each other. So what that means is it's the first time in the world that if, say, for example, Neutron Pay has Lightning, and another company, for example, Cash App, has now Lightning. It's the first time ever that an app and another app can communicate with each other. So I can go and send a payment over to a Cash App user, and a Cash App user can send a payment over to me over the Lightning Network. There's no other network today that can do that. Obviously, there's other blockchains that do it, but if we're just focused on the Lightning Network, that allows us now to send it to anyone else or any other network that wants to be on the Lightning Network. So we don't have to necessarily use Bitcoin as the means of value. We can. That's the native, I would say, currency on it. But you can put currencies on top of it, right? So you're making now Bitcoin the settlement layer for when a payment gets shot over. The Bitcoin actually is the one that's settling the amount, which now can be liquidated instantly for whatever currency it is that that person's receiving.
That's a really interesting point. So, with Bitcoin being the layer one piece of this, and how the payments are settled, this kind of bolsters use cases for, when people say Bitcoin could drop to zero, it's not really going to when you're building applications like this on top of it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why it's. I think there's still a lot of education that needs to be kind of brought out, because the focus of Bitcoin is just trading. Everyone wants to trade, they want to leverage on it, and kind of seeing what the markets happen like right now, everything's falling, right? But this is kind of like the third cycle of what's happened to Bitcoin, right? So people have said today that people have said, Bitcoin's dying again, right? And they said this in 2013 when it had a big dip. They said this in 2018 when it had a big dip. And now they're saying it again in 2022, right? So now it's kind of like you kind of see these ebbs and flows. But if you look at Bitcoin in general, ever since its birth and now 13 years, it's been on a trajectory, always in a linear scale up, right? And the technology has been getting better and better every single year, right? So it's the only network that has a complete uptime that we can say factually that it's 99.98% up ever since its inception, right? So no other network in the world can say that they've done that, and it's up 24/7, gets attacked every single day, but it gets stronger and stronger every single year.
That's cool too. And for from an F5 perspective, we work a lot with applications, infrastructure, cybersecurity. So let's talk about Lightning Network as from that perspective. What are the underlying technologies? Like if you were to open up the hood, what makes up Lightning Network itself?
So Lightning Network itself is consisted of, you can call them like a bunch of node operators, right? So to run a node, you just have to have the Bitcoin client, right? So that's the base, and then the other client is the network client, which is composed of There's three clients today. So you can use LND, which is produced by Lightning Labs. You can use Async, which is a company out of France. And you can use another client that's called, it used to be called C Lightning, but it's called Core Lightning. And that's made by Blockstream. And so once you run more than any of these clients, you're connected to the Lightning Network. And that allows you to facilitate transactions, send and receive. And that's kind of what Neutron Pay is built on. So we allow people to get into the Lightning Network through our services and through our API packages.
Yeah, let's maybe dive into that. You created Neutron Pay to solve a challenge with Lightning Network. Like there's the network itself, but you need this Neutron. You need your Neutron layer to be able to facilitate the payments.
No, so we're kind of, you can look at us as like a Lightning service provider, like an LSP. And so we provide the complexity that Lightning has, and we try to package it up in a very simple package for businesses for that want to use that service to like provide to their clients. And so what we're trying to do is give them a package that's a very easy and simplistic way for them to go to market strategy. So if people want to have like a business, for example, like an enterprise business, like a PSP that wanted to serve, say, for example, their gig economy, like Uber. So if Uber wanted to have an option to pay out their drivers, they normally pay them out commissions. Those drivers could say, "Hey, now I want, like, say, a percentage in Bitcoin Lightning." We could provide that to them in that sense.
And so, from your perspective, then, do you see like traditional banks getting into this world as well, or are you seeing them kind of stay out of it, and it's looking like things like Cash App and Neutron Pay?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, I think the banks, they don't like something that they're not able to control, right? So Lightning itself is decentralized, right? So there's no head, there's no foundation, there's no CEO, there's no corporation on there. It's an open protocol. So anyone can really build on it. So there's no one that can really be called upon to say, "Hey, I need you to stop Bitcoin," or "I need you to stop the Lightning Network because it's doing XYZ and we don't like it," right? There's a specific, or they could say there's a framework that is not being followed, or some licensing that we'd like you to follow in order for it to operate. There's no one there at the helm, and that's what makes the Lightning Network beautiful. And I don't think the banks, that from my opinion, I don't think the banks would want to go into Lightning, because then they're kind of releasing their kind of hold on what they have on the legacy systems. What I think would happen though is they'll probably let companies like myself, like Neutron Pay, and other companies like Cash App and whoever else that want to implement into the Lightning Network. What I think is going to happen is that the banks will probably acquire these type of businesses and absorb them into their product market set, and then provide that out to their services, because the banks probably do not want to build the infrastructure that Lightning requires, and they'll just let someone else do that and then acquire that business into their business.
Okay, fair enough. And you talked about legacy solutions. So when you say that, we're talking about like Swift wire transfers.
Yeah, exactly. So anything that we do today with, like, yeah, Visa, Mastercard, Swift, Wire, anything that we do today traditionally is the legacy system.
And so let's talk about the challenges with that. I've used wire transfers here and there in the past before. To me, it seems a little bit sketchy. Not, I shouldn't say sketchy, but you're giving some information. You have to make sure your numbers are exact and it's going to that place, because once it's gone, and you don't really find out for potentially a couple days. And so, am I getting that right, or is there other challenges with that too?
No, you're right. Like, I mean, I think traditionally, if anyone goes to try to do a wire today, they'll find out really quick that they'll have to have 40 minutes to an hour to sit in the bank to make sure that that wire is going to be completed properly, right? So you have to sit down with the teller. The teller has to ask you all the information. The wiring information has to be correct, right? Everything from the bank to where it's going to the person that it's going to, or the business that it's going to. If one number is incorrect, you won't find out for another 5 or 7 days, right? If that person on the other side doesn't receive it, it's because there's something that's wrong with the wire. And that's exactly what you said. There's a black hole with doing a wire, and that's just the legacy, how the legacy system was built, right? It was built in the 1950s, right? And we're not able to upgrade it, right? It's a bunch of mainframes. We're just layering on top of what we think is something that we can improve, but we can't. The overall core functionality of it is very strong, but we just can't improve on it, right? Meaning that traditionally it's a pull system, it's not a push system, so we can't change the mechanics of that. And that's what kind of makes a lot of the payments today a little slow. Like, for example, the wire, that's why it takes anywhere from 3 to 5 business days. When they say it's a little bit shorter than 5 days, it's because there's no fraud in between, right? If it takes more than 3 days, that means that they've detected something that's fraud. They give them another 3 days to figure out what that looks like. And then once that's figured out, the extra day, which is called the seventh day, then they release it, right? So if it's really good and everything checks out, then 3 days you'll get that wire. But even 3 days is a long time to get a money from point A to point B, right? And then you still have that blind spot in the middle. And so where I think Lightning and Bitcoin solve that issue is that everything's open and transparent, right? So on the first layer, if I send you something, we can look at that like a wire. If I sent you something on Bitcoin, you can instantly go check that yourself on the Bitcoin Explorer, typing in your address, and then you'll see something that's been actually, sent from my address to your address, right? There won't be a name, but you've known that I've sent that transaction over to you because your address has now received something from an address which I said is mine.
And that's interesting too. So you get instant verification,
Yep.
and you can double check to your heart's
Yep.
content
Yep.
yourself without having to go to the bank, for those 5 days and check with
Yep.
that. They probably don't have a way to really check afterwards, right?
They don't, yeah, because once it leaves the source, right? Once it's leaving, say you're starting trying to send something overseas. Once it leaves Vancouver, they can't trace that, so they can't see anything until it reaches that destination and say that if they received it, because it goes through so many intermediaries that they have no idea who it bounces off back and forth. They just know that it's going to this particular destination. And so with Bitcoin, you're able to see your transaction instantly on the first layer, right? On the second layer, on Lightning Network, you're not necessarily able to see that because that's more of a private transaction. And this is where confidentiality and privacy comes into place, right? Where this is where Lightning Network gets a little bit of flack from a lot of the governments and officials that say, if I can't see what's being transferred, how do I know that you're doing the proper AML and KYC, right? More or less AML, right? Because KYC you can always do on the endpoints, but the AML, they don't know if that particular person who's receiving it could be anywhere. They can say, yes, I'm in, say, Africa, but the person who's receiving it, that wallet could be somewhere in the UK, right? So that those transactions are not public for a reason, but they're instant and they are available to, say, Lightning companies like ourselves. So we do have the ledger of where it's going from A to B, and that's what we would provide to, say, because we're FinTrack compliant and we're an MSB. So these are the records that we would share with, obviously, CRA and FinTrack if they requested it. But if a person wanted to check it, like on the first layer on Bitcoin, they can't do that. That's the only thing that difference Bitcoin on chain and the Lightning Network, the second layer.
So there was a couple of acronyms that you just mentioned as well that I don't know. So I'd love if you could clear up AML and KYC.
Yeah, so AML is anti money laundering, and
Okay.
KYC is know your customer.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
And so those are standards from FinTrack or someone else.
So anyone who's in a financial business or fintech have to abide by KYC and AML, and so these are just kind of the set standard licensing rules that we have to follow, and that's just collecting information from your clients. So anything from first name to last name, date of birth. You'll see a lot of these things like Jumio is another a good product that collects all that information for a lot of services today and for verification. And that's what every financial company and now anyone that's in Bitcoin or crypto has to follow these rules to be a compliant business.
Yeah. So another thing that I guess we could compare contrast from traditional payment forms is early on you talked about like the minimum amounts to be able to do transactions, and so something like a wire transfer in Canada here, the last time I did it, it was like $20 or $40 to be able to do that. So it doesn't really make sense. Again, going back to the use case of, hey, you're out with some friends and you need to be able to spot your friends some money because they picked up the bill for wherever you're out at. This makes it feasible to do smaller transactions peer to peer or with merchants.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, so it allows you to you can pay a friend if you needed to a small amount. So if you owed them $1 or $2, that can be easily done anywhere from the sky's the limit to whatever you'd like to pay them. But you can pay. A good use case that we see a lot of people use here is that because we're primarily focused on the Vietnam market or Vietnam kind of community. So being the Vietnamese community in Canada and then having Vietnamese people here wanting to transact with either their friends or family, because a lot of Vietnamese people have their children over now in, say, Vancouver and Toronto doing a lot of schooling. And so when they want to transfer money right now, doing it through a wire is quite complicated. And so it usually involves a large amount where maybe they don't need such a large an amount to be transferred through, but maybe they need a smaller amount because of a particular thing that needs to be bought, right? And so now you can have these smaller amounts be sent through. So like say $20, $100, whatever it is that they need to have something instantly, they could use a Lightning Network to pay that, to facilitate that transaction on the other side.
And so, you've mentioned you're in Vietnam right now. This technology, not saying that Vietnam's a third world country, but there are a lot of countries where they don't have as much of the infrastructure that we have in North America and Europe around banking. And so, this is without the banks in play, this is going to help out in those third world countries where they don't have as strong of that infrastructure.
Yeah, so it's the beautiful thing about the Lightning Network and Bitcoin is that you just need an internet connection, right? And it's kind of funny that when you go to a lot of the third world countries, I think Vietnam is still kind of third world, but they're moving up. But a lot of these countries that you visit, it's kind of funny. You'll notice that they don't have a whole lot, but everything that they do have is a cell phone. Everybody has a cell phone. Like everyone has a smartphone, right? And that's what allows a lot of people now to transact, right? So this is where the Lightning Network and Bitcoin become, I would say, probably very useful for people in these countries, right? Because a lot of them don't have access to banks. A lot of them don't have the IDs to open up bank accounts. Maybe they lost it, or maybe they don't have the documents anymore to prove who they are, right? But they are able to get a phone. And as soon as they're able to get a phone, they have an internet connection. Internet connections everywhere. They can now download an app and have financial services somewhat, right, of being able to transact, right, with say other people that are around that use the Bitcoin lending, or they have friends and family that could send them money, and they go to a broker which is in their local country, which would exchange that for cash for them. So now they have a way of getting money instead of not saying, well, I can't get money because I don't have a bank account. But now that they have a phone and they have access to it, they can have money from, say, a family member that does have access to Bitcoin to send them.
Yeah, cool. And so for Vietnam, so you're in Vietnam, Neutron Pay, as the Neutron Pay CEO, you've identified a pretty big market opportunity with this that you're trying to jump on pretty quickly here. Can you tell me more about what you feel? Don't divulge anything that you shouldn't publicly, but what kind of market opportunity are you seeing right now and trying to address with Neutron Pay?
Yeah, so when I started Neutron Pay, it started in Vancouver, right? And so for Vancouver in Canada, we don't need another payment rail, right? We're very comfortable with our debit cards, credit cards, our banking system's very safe, our government's very safe. Introducing something like this wasn't very appealing to kind of North America, and then kind of just being of Vietnamese descent and coming to Vietnam a couple times, doing some market research into that, I just saw that there was a bigger opportunity over there. One, the population is 100 million, and two, they've leapfrogged from having nothing to mobile devices. Meaning that in North America, we were fortunate enough to go from nothing to laptops, or to computers, laptops, and then mobile devices. Vietnam itself didn't have that. It was from nothing all the way to mobile devices. And so what that allowed for was the use of people being more acceptable to apps and change, right? With a combination of the culture here. So meaning that banking here is okay, but some people don't trust the banks here, right? There's a kind of like a love-hate relationship here where they say, I like the banks, but I don't like the banks and I don't trust them. And that's kind of the same thing with the government. I like the government, but I don't like the government. And so that's kind of what kind of spurred me to come over here as a market opportunity. And just that the country itself is growing at a very rapid pace, right? I think in the last 3 years, aside from COVID, it's been in the top five for GDP growth for the last 3 years, right? So that coupled with people being willing to accept new technologies and new things, just kind of made a good kind of, I guess, recipe for us to come over and kind of take that market share and opportunity. And kind of seeing when I came here, it was supposed to be only for a 3 month market kind of, I guess, expedition and kind of gather as much data as I could. that quickly turned into a 3-year stunt. So we went from 3 months to 3 years. And that was just because of the opportunity here, right? And how fast people were able to understand and pick up the technology. But even when I was here, people already understood how Bitcoin worked. They're already using it already, right? So not necessarily for payments, but a lot for transfers, right? So they're moving their money from one side of the country to another side of the country because wires and whatever else that they were using in the system was either inefficient or it was too expensive to do in a certain way. And so that kind of put everything together on that side of things for us to kind of explore a little bit further into Vietnam. But yeah, without giving too much more of why we came here, that's one of the main reasons.
Yeah, that's cool. And so that's an interesting point that you bring up, that they're already kind of accustomed to Bitcoin. Somebody picking up Neutron Pay, Lightning Network, and they're going to make a transaction. Like, how aware of you've kind of mentioned it already, but how aware are most people around what's underneath that's Bitcoin underneath, or do they care at that point? I mean, I guess they see the transaction happening in that currency, but do they really think it matters, or they're just like, oh, I could transfer money now?
It's kind of funny. They really don't see the two layers, right? They just look at it as I can receive the money a lot faster now. Because before, when we came here, it would be if I sent you something, I gotta wait 10 minutes. And now when we tell them the Lightning Network, it's the same Bitcoin that you're using, but now you get to receive it instantly. So now that's changed their whole perspective on it and says, oh wow, has it upgraded? Has the software changed or whatever, or has a new feature come on, right? So they just look at it as another way of receiving Bitcoin in a lot faster way than what it was before, which was 10 minutes. So some people do actually care about how that happens, like what was changed, why was it changed. But I would say kind of a majority of the people they're just happy to get their money, right? So they they just say if their cousin in the United States is able to send them something over, once they see it instantly now before having to wait and check on the Bitcoin Explorer, it's changed a lot of people's view on what Bitcoin actually is, as opposed to like price and transfer. Now they look at it as more of a means of kind of almost payment as well, right? Accepting of payments, because now you can actually pay for things, right? You don't have to wait at, say, a coffee stand that's outside, like a street vendor, right? Usually they'd have to pay, wait for 10 minutes, and then they'll say, okay, you're good. Now you can
Hmm.
go. But now you can actually pay for it like anything else that we do today, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome. I'm sure you're identifying other countries to go after as well, and deploy this in, but you don't have to mention where else you're planning if you don't want to. Um, that's this is all great info. I think we can probably leave folks with some information on how they can get a hold of you or get more info about Neutron Pay.
Yeah, they can follow us on neutronpay.com, and then they can also follow us on Twitter. Our handle is at neutronpay. We post all our statuses up there, and if there's any more information they need, yeah, they can look at our website and then reach out by email or send us something on a Twitter post.
Awesome. Okay, sounds good. I will put all of those links down in the description box below. Thank you very much for joining me, Albert. Always a pleasure talking to you, and I wish you all the success in building Neutron Pay.
Thanks, Boo. Thanks for having me.